Good afternoon, I hope everyone's well today. Thank you for watching, it is appreciated. This video is about the convergence of Reform UK, Restore Britain, Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage. And the left are absolutely not going to pull anything out of the hat to save themselves. And the conversation is firmly where it needs to be, on the right, and it keeps on shifting right. The first thing I want to do is, I want to bring up this tweet. This is from earlier on today. Zach Palangsty of the Green Party, who are doing well in the polls. Hats off to them. They are level pegging with Labour. That's good for them. They put out this, and it says, our entire political conversation under a Labour government has taken a huge shift to the right. We cannot let this be normalised. What he doesn't actually realise, or he does realise, he's just trying to gloss over it. We've been in a leftist bubble since 1997 under Tony Blair. We've not really had anything remotely right-leaning since the 1990s. Anybody in the United Kingdom who was born after 1997, you have my apologies and you have my condolences because you don't actually know. Britain never used to be this way. We actually had a country that worked. Then we get on to an interesting addition to Reform UK that came a few weeks ago, and I posted on this on my channel. I made a post about it, not a video, and it's this guy. Cambridge Associate Professor of Theology James Orr has joined as a senior Reform UK team member and become a senior advisor to Nigel Farage. That's important for a clip I'm going to show you later in the video. The fallout between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage, I think, was an unforced error. I'm Team Rupert Lowe, but I'm also Team Reform. I'm a member of Reform UK, and when Rupert Lowe set up Restore Britain, I became a member of that organisation as well, because it's not a political party, it's a movement. There is no contradiction. Rupert Lowe got into politics, in my view, for the best of intentions, but best intentions are not going to win at elections. The fallout about policy from what Rupert Lowe has said between him and Farage is basically why Restore Britain has been set up. I think Rupert did go in a little naive and a little green, not understanding how the Westminster system and the bubble and the political establishment would actually ruin Reform UK unless the Overton window has been shifted to the right. Who can remember this video clip from about a year ago from Nigel Farage? He was on, I think it's Winston Marshall's podcast, and he put this video out.
It is. We have a Muslim population in Britain growing by about 75% every 10 years. Right? That's just where we are. Mm-hmm. If we politically alienate the whole of Islam, we will lose. We'll lose.
So how does one include
We will lose. By 2050, goodness knows what kind of a terrible state we're going to be in.
So that was November last year, and then you fast forward 10 months to July this year, and this is a very different Nigel Farage, and he puts out this video.
Everyone that comes illegally will be deported, full stop, end of story.
Big shift in 10 months, and we've got one thing to thank for it in my view, and that's Restore Britain. They are shaping the conversation, they are moving the Overton window, they have good people working with Rupert Lowe, such as Harrison Pitt from the New Culture Forum, and Lewis Brackpool, who has a good channel, so you may want to check out his channel as well. He does a lot of freedom of information requests from the government and likes to rummage through the government's dirty knicker drawer, for lack of a better phrase. And sometimes he gets rebuffed, and sometimes he gets good responses, so I do recommend his channel. The stage has been set, and I'm going to link in the description the policy work that Restore Britain is doing. They've already done their first piece, which is on how mass remigration and mass deportations is actually going to work in practice. So you may want to look at that. As I say, the link will be down in the description for the video. I seen a very interesting podcast, and it's between the guy I mentioned earlier who's joined Reform UK, James Orr, and one of the intellectual godfathers of the right of centre politics, which is the good Canadian chap, Jordan Peterson. So I'm going to play this clip now, and you'll see what I've already highlighted in this video, and I previously highlighted in other videos what's happening and why we all need to jump on the reform train at this point. So I'm going to play that clip now.
But Kemi, to her credit, is very smart, a lawyer and an engineer, which is a good combination, and she can see what's valuable about the civilization of the West, particularly the UK, and she can agitate for it in a way that would be difficult for someone who wasn't an outsider. So
Sure.
that's very interesting.
Then why isn't she agitating, or why do some people think she's not agitating for some of the policy solutions that Nigel Farage is advocating for? For example, getting outside the jurisdiction of a foreign court in Strasbourg so that we can find it easier to regain control of the borders, for example.
Well, I think part of it is that...
Well, she is now. That's a slight revision. This clip is about a month old. But this is the slight revision that's happened even in the past month. The Tories have now committed to leaving the ECHR, which only Reform UK committed to previously. But again, within the space of a month, the Overton window is shifting rightward. So even the on-paper right of centre party, the Conservatives, are now advocating for the reform policy platform of leaving the ECHR. Anyway, we'll continue.
Politicians are constrained. Yes, they tend not to be icebreakers on the policy side. My experience has been that, I mean, one of the things the Conservatives in Canada have told me is that I can break the ice on certain topics, climate, for example, being one of them, and move the window for acceptable conversation forward, and then they can step behind me.
That's the point. I said that's why Restore Britain has been created, because Rupert Lowe, bless him, I am a huge fan of Rupert Lowe, and we're going to play a clip that he said in the Select Committee in Parliament recently in a minute. He may have been naive in the way in the political system in the UK works, whereas if you don't go where the conversation is, you can be ostracised and basically essentially run out of Parliament with the other MPs with running after you with pitchforks. That type of thing can actually happen, and the media would disown you and you'd lose access, and that can be really difficult to recover from. So while I really admire Rupert Lowe's sincerity, and as I say, if I was in his constituency he would be my MP, I'd vote for him every time, you've got to play the game as it is, not as you want it to be, which is what Dr. Jordan Peterson is saying here. You need an organisation, you need a think tank, you need a group of people that can shift the conversation where you need it to be, and then the politicians, once they know that the water is safe to swim in, they'll go swimming. And that's exactly what's happening with Restore Britain and Reform UK, and the Tories are trying to catch up. We'll continue.
Right, and you know, you could be cynical about that and say that they lack courage, but you don't want to get all moralistic and on your high horse to begin with. You might also say, well, the politicians are constrained by the necessity of broad public appeal, and
this is why I've never disowned Nigel Farage, I've never disowned Ben Habib from Advance UK, I think he's a great guy, and I've never disowned Restore Britain. As I say, I'm a member. We're all on the same team, we all want the same thing. It's just the course on how we get there can differ slightly, okay? We're talking about fractions of a percent and nuance on how you're going to achieve it. This is why I'm pragmatic, alright? Reform UK is the viable alternative at the moment. That can change on a dime, that can change tomorrow. This is what you need to pay attention to, so we'll continue with the clip.
if you're going to be on the bleeding edge of a discussion, to begin with, you're going to be in a minority position, obviously, and that's not exactly their position. But Kemi and Nigel could really, they have such an opportunity because they could one-up each other. You know, I saw this a little bit in the discussion with Nigel because I know that he's a climate change skeptic.
This is what you'll see between Reform UK and the Tories for the next 4 years before the next general election. They're both going to try and one-up each other, and there's no losers in that scenario. Everybody on the right wins. This is what Zach Polanski, Palace's Cotton Socks, doesn't understand. The reason why we're pivoting rightward is the establishment was sent a very clear message 10 years ago with Brexit. It's not been implemented correctly. We wanted less migration, we got more migration. That's just one example. They've not deregulated, they've not actually uncoupled from the EU. On paper we've left, we've not actually took any advantages of any of the Brexit freedoms we've won. This is why we're still on the right. We're meant to pivot right under the Tories with Brexit. That did not happen. Alright? The concept of Brexit is not right-leaning or left-leaning. It can be applied either way. Back in the day, the godfathers of the left, as it were, like Tony Benn, Barbara Castle, you know, they were big figures in the Labour Party in the 70s. They were very anti-Brexit for the very reason why many, like Jeremy Corbyn, regardless of what he said publicly, he voted for Brexit because the working person in the United Kingdom has nothing to gain. The working class person has nothing to gain from expanding the employment market to the European continent. That is the fundamental reason why Brexit as a left-wing argument is strong. This is the issue, alright? That's why we're going to keep on shifting right and right and right again.
Or at least a skeptic of the idiot economic policies that
He
come
thinks
out.
certainly that the trade-offs entailed by net zero will be ruinous to the working classes, to the
Right.
poor who are always disproportionately affected by higher energy prices.
Right, and that's a good start.
Yeah.
You know, what I'd like to see happen, and this could happen in this head-to-head debate between Badenoch and Farage, I'd like to see them dare each other to abandon the climate apocalypse narrative entirely. And they can see they're in a position now where they can do that because one of them, if they're head-to-head on a certain issue, one of them could step forward a bit more. So Farage will say, for example, well, we're not going to do 2030, maybe we'll do 2050. Well, and then Badenoch could say, well, maybe we'll do 2100. And then Farage could say, how about we're just done with the whole mess, right? And they can test each other that way.
The problem is that Nigel will always be able to say that the mess began with you.
That's the key point. The Tories and Reform are basically in a right-wing arms race at the moment, trying to one-up each other. But Farage and Reform UK can always point to the Tories and said, well, this all happened under your watch. Why have you changed your mind? It's because you've realised that it's not an election winner, that it's unpopular, that your voters don't want it. And you can't say that for Reform. You can say, well, they've never been in government. Some people can try and dunk on Reform to say, well, that's a bad thing. Well, no means their hands are clean. They've not been tested in government. When everyone blames Nigel Farage for Brexit, he didn't implement Brexit. Alright? The establishment implemented Brexit and it wasn't designed to work.
The mess with and I think that's a sort of the Tories, I think, are very much hamstrung on all of these different issues because it will always be possible for either Farage or Starmer to push back and say, well, hold on, you're trying to outflank me, but every time, the more you outflank me, the more inconsistent you are with the regime that you propped up.
Well,
so we'll leave that one there. As I say, this guy is James Orr. He is now senior advisor to Reform UK and Nigel Farage. I'm most impressed by the way that he's having this conversation with Jordan Peterson. I think it's really, really, really good news that he's now in the Reform fold. Now, as I say, the point of Restore Britain, which is the outfit that Rupert Lowe is running, is that they can shift the conversation rightward. And when the water is safe, Nigel Farage can jump in with both feet, which is what we've seen with mass deportations. Now, this is what Rupert Lowe's doing in Parliament, and he's got balls of steel. Alright, he's actually saying things that we need to be said in Parliament. I can't think of any mainstream Labour or Tory Member of Parliament saying this, because it just wouldn't be proper. It wouldn't be the done thing. But it's what we all think.
Lowe. Oh, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. The ECHR, what does it actually mean for British people? Let's go through a few examples, shall we? A convicted Sri Lankan sex offender allowed to stay in Britain because he is gay and would be at risk of persecution if he was returned to his home country. I don't care. A Jamaican drug dealer was jailed twice, allowed to stay in Britain after claiming his removal would breach his right to a family life. I don't care. A Zimbabwean jailed for killing a man in a car crash.
Continue.
No. A Zimbabwean jailed for killing a man in a car crash, allowed to stay in Britain after it was discovered he had an illicit love child. I don't care. A convicted Indian paedophile allowed to stay in Britain by claiming the move would harm his children. I don't care. An Albanian criminal was allowed to stay in Britain partly because his son will not eat foreign chicken nuggets. I definitely don't care.
Now you can hear from the harping seals in the select committee that the establishment, both Labour and Tories, really unhappy with Rupert Lowe. This is the freedom that being an independent MP gives you. For the moment, it's effective that he's outside of the reform fold. That's not going to last forever. Before the next election, he's going to be back in the fold. He's too valuable an asset. So we're going to leave this one there, but I'm grateful that Rupert Lowe is actually saying what we all think in Parliament. So to sum up, Restore Britain is doing what Jordan Peterson has said it needs to do, which is shifting the conversation to where we need it to be. When it's safe, the politicians can jump in and start swimming. You could say that the cowards. I'm pragmatic. We've got to work with what we've got. Now, these are just my thoughts. Your mileage may vary. This is the very specific reason I believe that Restore Britain was set up, and that's why I joined it. I think that reform is the vehicle, and Restore Britain can do the policy. And obviously, they've had a defection in Danny Kruger. He's probably one of the most impressive Conservative politicians that we have, other than Nick Timothy, who had done a video on yesterday. But these are just my thoughts. Do you think that there's no coming back for the Tories? I certainly do. Do you think at the moment Reform UK is the best shop in town? Advance UK offers the proverbial lifeboats if Reform UK gets in and they don't uphold the policies and promises they made. Your mileage may vary. Comment below. This is all part of the plan, and it's to make sure the left is truly defeated. Zach Polanski is on a loser, is going to hover around 20, maybe 25%. That doesn't win elections. You need at least 32, 36% of the votes to swing the seats in a first past the post system. As always, like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Have a good day.